How to stop worrying about what others think of you. I once watched a man freeze mid-sentence because two strangers across the room laughed at something unrelated, and he assumed, instantly, that they were laughing at him. His face tightened, his shoulders shrank, and you could almost see his confidence leaking out like air from a punctured tire. It struck me how easily we hand our power to people who aren't thinking about us in the first place. And today, we're breaking down how to stop worrying about what others think and finally live with a mind that belongs to you again. 1. Embrace dislike. Most people cling to the illusion that being universally liked is both possible and necessary. They move through life tiptoeing, adjusting their tone, shrinking their personality, trying not to offend anyone, only to end up offending themselves. But the moment you accept that someone, somewhere, will dislike you no matter how gentle your voice or how warm your smile, you begin to taste real freedom. Dislike is not a failure. It's proof that you are visible. A Stoic once wrote that we suffer more in imagination than reality, and nowhere is this truer than in the fear of judgment. The mind invents harsh critics watching your every move, when in truth most people are lost in their own worries, too busy thinking about how they look to care about you. The person whose opinion you fear probably forgot the interaction within minutes. Yet you carry it for hours, like a stone in your pocket. Once, during a group discussion, I disagreed with someone who clearly expected everyone to nod along. His expression tightened, his voice turned sharp, and I could feel the room turn colder, almost like the air carried the scent of disapproval, thick and unpleasant. For a moment, I felt the familiar sting. What if they all think I'm difficult? What if they all think I'm wrong? But then a strange calm settled over me. I realized I respected myself more for being truthful than I ever would have for performing agreement. Dislike is simply a natural reaction to authenticity. If you're being true to yourself, it is inevitable that someone will be bothered by you. Not because you're wrong, but because they would rather deal with a version of you they can control. Let them dislike who you truly are. That is better than being loved for who you are not. When you finally embrace the reality that not everyone will approve of you, you free your posture, your voice, your choices, your entire life. You breathe easier because your identity no longer relies on outside applause. And the irony? When you stop chasing approval, people respect you more. Because confidence, even quiet confidence, carries its own gravity. 2. Spend time alone. There's a reason many people fear solitude. Being alone forces you to hear the truth about yourself. There is no applause to validate you, no audience to perform for, no pressure to mold yourself to fit anyone's expectations. It's just you, your thoughts, your desires, your fears, your voice. And if you've spent years constructing your identity around the opinions of others, that silence can feel unnerving. But solitude is where your real self begins to breathe. There was a time when I filled my schedule with noise, meetings, calls, company, conversation, anything to avoid being alone with my own mind. I told myself I was busy, but the truth was simpler. Stillness terrified me. Alone, I could feel the weight of other people's expectations clinging to me like heavy fabric I didn't know how to remove. So, one afternoon, I tried something painfully unfamiliar, sitting alone in a quiet park with no phone, no music, nothing but my own thoughts. At first, it felt strange. I could hear the rustling of trees, the soft sweep of wind, a faint smell of distant smoke from someone's bride drifting in the air. My thoughts were loud and restless. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. The noise in my mind began to settle. I could feel my own presence again, and that moment taught me something I had been avoiding for years. If you never learn to be comfortable alone, you will always depend on others to tell you who you are. Solitude is the training ground for confidence. It teaches you to trust your own instincts, to hear your own voice, to strengthen your emotional spine. When you become at ease in your own company, you stop fearing the loss of other people's approval. A person who is comfortable alone is impossible to manipulate. You stop changing yourself to fit into rooms not meant for you. You stop desperately decoding people's expressions, trying to read their inner opinions like a sacred text. You stand from a different center, the one you built inside yourself. Spending time alone is not isolation. It is self-restoration. It is returning home. 3. Learn to master your emotions. Caring too much about what others think is rarely about them. It's about the emotions their reactions trigger in you. It's about fear, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of being misunderstood. When your emotions rule you, other people rule you. Their smallest facial expression becomes a verdict. Their silence feels like a condemnation. Their tone becomes a threat. Stoic thought wasn't about becoming emotionless. It was about becoming emotionally sovereign, to feel deeply, but to be ruled by nothing. Think of your emotions like waves. They rise, they fall, they pull you in different directions. If you let them control you, you'll drown in every judgment, every raised eyebrow, every perceived disapproval. But if you learn to observe them, feel them without being consumed, you become unshakable. A person who masters their emotions becomes a mystery to those who try to control them. When someone tries to provoke you and your response is steady, warm, grounded, almost like your voice carries a calm center, they start to question their own power. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel without losing yourself. Sometimes, emotional control is as simple as breathing before responding. Sometimes it's recognizing that your anxious thoughts are not facts. Sometimes it's understanding that the discomfort you feel when someone disapproves of you is temporary, and so minor compared to the cost of living a life shaped by fear. Your emotions are messages, not instructions, and when you learn to sit with them, to feel their heat, their weight, the way they move through your chest, without letting them rearrange your identity, you become someone who steps into the world without trembling. Master your emotions, and other people's opinions lose their ability to dictate your life. 4. Open yourself up to criticism. Most people fear criticism because they treat it as an attack on their worth. They hear one negative comment and suddenly their whole identity trembles like a house built on sand. But criticism is not the enemy. It is information. It's a mirror that reveals blind spots, weaknesses, strengths, and areas you didn't know needed growth. When you fear criticism, you hand your power to everyone who has the courage to speak. There is a quiet strength in being able to listen to someone point out your flaws without feeling threatened. Not because you are perfect, but because your worth isn't tied to being flawless. When someone criticizes you, you have the right to filter it, evaluate it, and keep only what serves you. That's emotional maturity. Imagine sitting with someone who tells you gently or harshly, "You could have handled that better." Instead of shrinking, imagine leaning in. Imagine saying, "Tell me more." That is not weakness. That is confidence. Weak people avoid criticism because it shakes them. Strong people seek criticism because it sharpens them. Here is where humor slips in. If you live your life trying to impress everyone, you will end up impressing no one except the people who enjoy watching you suffer. And those people shouldn't have access to your emotional energy in the first place. Opening yourself to criticism does something extraordinary. It frees you from the prison of perfectionism. You stop trying to maintain an image. You stop hiding your flaws like stolen goods. You begin to walk through life with the lightness of someone who knows that making mistakes doesn't make you unworthy. It makes you human. And the irony, when you become comfortable with criticism, You also become harder to criticize, because nothing unsettles a critic more than someone who listens without fear. 5. Practice going against the grain. Freedom begins when you stop performing for approval and start acting from conviction. And the fastest way to break free from the fear of judgment is to intentionally do things that might attract judgment. Not reckless things, not harmful things, just behaviors that challenge your dependence on outside validation. Choose the seat no one else chose. Wear something unusual. Speak up when the room is silent. Laugh loudly, even if your laugh sounds like you're being attacked by a goose. Make a decision that others think is strange but feels right to you. Disagree respectfully when everyone expects you to nod along. Order something different at the restaurant. Try something new even if you're terrible at it. Every time you go against the grain, you send your mind a message. I choose my path, not because it's safe, but because it's mine. When you live like this consistently, you build a kind of internal muscle, a self-trust that becomes unshakable. You stop feeling the need to hide. You stop filtering your personality for acceptance. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into rooms too small for your purpose. Going against the grain teaches you something powerful about life. People respect authenticity far more than conformity, even if authenticity confuses them at first. And even if they never respect it, at least you will respect yourself. Because the only thing worse than being judged is living a life that never belonged to you. Conclusion. At some point you have to decide that your life belongs to you and no one else. The moment you stop bending to every passing opinion, the world doesn't fall apart. It finally starts to make sense. Because peace isn't found in being liked. It's found in being real.